Yeah, there's a really good foundational understanding you have to have about the manufacturing environment. Like, it is inherently this super complex system of systems, right? There are people, there are processes, there are machines, there's material, all moving and changing in this very dynamic environment that it even makes it like super difficult to model. And so when you have that type of environment, there is so much data that is being produced, but it is very hard to contextualize, to organize, to make meaning out of. And so I think what's in front of us today with these like new tools and these AI tools is going to be ways to actually take all of that data and actually organize it in some sort of meaningful way and actually make sense of it.
My name is Madeline Castillo, and I'm the CMO here at Tulip, and this is our video series, Humans in the Loop, where I speak with the folks behind the product. And I have a couple of colleagues here with me today. Why don't you introduce yourselves?
Yeah. So, hi everybody. My name is Gilad Langer. I lead our industry practice, and I'll explain in just a bit. And I've been with Tulip around more than 6 years actually. Started way back when we were more than around 40 people. I've been doing this for quite a long time, nearly 30 years. I don't know if the camera will show my age, but I started my career in academia in the 90s and did some research at the time that was a precursor for what then became Industry 4.0. So I've been doing this from very early in career. Then I worked in industry for both software vendors and integrators. So being around the block and seeing things happen, around roughly 2017, I realized that a lot of the things that we talked about back in the day in the 90s are coming to fruition as technology is maturing. In 2019, I stumbled, honestly, on Nathan on LinkedIn. Nathan convinced me that this is the next big thing. And I believe it is, right? So, what we do at Tulip here and part of industry practice is realization of a lot of ideas and concepts that were talked about in the 90s. One of the things, if you read back to some of the stuff, or I read back to some of the stuff I wrote in the 90s, I talked about disruptions in supply chains, about companies having to be agile and adapt very, very quickly. Things that in the 20 years after that, were just fell on deaf ears. But now with COVID and with everything that's happening right now in our business environment, it's becoming a reality. So for me, this is it's deep in everything I do. It's also something I'm passionate about. It's really kind of late in my career to realize a lot of the stuff that has happened is so exciting, and I'm just every day is so exciting. And I'm not saying that I want to see the bad things happen, but the fact that businesses need to adapt to this environment and that we have the technology to help them do that is very fulfilling.
Well, I really appreciate you bringing your expertise and perspective to the conversation. Jeff, why don't you introduce yourself as well?
Yeah. Hi, everyone. Jeff Winkley. I lead our US-based solution delivery team here at Tulip. So we are part of professional services organization that is engaging directly with customers to actually help them implement and adopt Tulip as a technology. My career started in a little bit of a different place than you, Gilad. I started right in manufacturing, in operations, on the shop floor. So I started off in a Fortune 50 aerospace company where I was working in quality, trying to solve many of the problems that our customers are actually trying to solve today with Tulip. So being in the trenches, understanding the type of systems and technologies we were using to run our operations, to track defects on the shop floor, to do corrective actions, to improve productivity. All these problem statements is really what I started my career attempting to attack. And today, after about 10 years of doing that, and now about 4 years being here at Tulip, I get to help customers across many different industries, solve a lot of those same problems. And I think what is, really interesting, kind of unique about this position is we engage with customers from various industries of various sizes, trying to solve oftentimes, very similar problems. So it's really exciting to sit down here today with both of you and talk a little bit about how this technology is kind of being disrupted once again.
I think that's a really good point, because to Gilad's kind of description, the manufacturing operation space was already being disrupted, and now maybe the world is being disrupted and reshuffled based on what's going on with generative AI, and as we all kind of figure out what makes sense to use it for. So starting there, Gilad, you've spent years studying and working with traditional manufacturing processes. If you step back, what are the core principles that still hold true even in the age of AI when it comes to optimizing those operations and what manufacturers really need from their technology vendors?
Yeah. Everybody knows that lean manufacturing or operational excellence is the name of the game, right? So, one of the things that we know about manufacturing, so even when I explain it to people that are outside the industry, right? A plant, is supposed to produce goods, but it's supposed to do it in the most optimal way. Because you as a customer want the best quality for the cheapest price. That it doesn't change. So if you go into a manufacturing plant, optimization is the name of the game. And when we talk about optimization, really the fundament or the basis for all that was set by Toyota and the Toyota production system. So lean and operational excellence is what drives a plant, and there is no plant manager in the world that's going to tell you that I don't do lean. So anytime we talk about technology for manufacturing, it has to align, or it has to support this operational excellence and doing more for less. And if that technology doesn't do that, and it doesn't matter if it's AI or a spreadsheet, if it doesn't support that core need to improve excellence, then you're not going to be successful.
Jeff, maybe adding to that core approach. When customers come to Tulip, you work with a lot of customers, your team, customer facing.
All day, every day.
Customer team. Yeah. When they come to Tulip, what are the pain points that they're facing with traditional MES that they're most looking to move past to kind of become more efficient and achieve that operational excellence?
Yeah, it's a really interesting question. And before I get there, just to kind of add on to your point, Gilad, I think there's almost an interesting angle on what we view as, our customers and these manufacturers in the space. They almost have to be adapting this technology in order to stay competitive, right? Because, with any new technological revolution, any of these waves that come through, there's always disruptors that tend to come into the field, and the manufacturers out there, kind of have to adopt this in order to attack their waste in their facility to stay competitive. So when we have customers approach us, it could be a variety of use cases that they really want to focus on. I think there is the common theme that they are trying to get productivity gains from what they're doing. But I would say the most, common problems that we see in our customer base is, manufacturers that are looking to understand on any given day, any given week or month, how are my operations doing? The average person might be surprised about how difficult it is or how uncommon it is for manufacturers just to track their basic, productivity metrics. What is my output? What was my quality this week? Am I red or am I green? And if I am not green, how do I react to that? So sometimes, there are very simple problem statements that our customers are trying to tackle. And I would say that's probably the most common thing, we see.
So this question of whether or not they're winning or losing the day.
Right. Yeah.
And you'd be surprised. It's such a big problem. Everybody lives it, but there's a lot of plants that can't tell you. And the way they do it and technology that they use, sometimes it's astounding. And we see that people coming out, even the young generation coming out to manufacturing today, looking at all the paper that's going on. So I think we'll see in the coming years, we'll see that digital spread into manufacturing and change, and those productivity gains starting to happen.
Yeah, we definitely see it in isolation. A lot of our customers, they may have a mature ERP deployment, and their finance team is able to say, hey, I have this much inventory, this was my revenue this month. So they could say, from that high level, they understand where the business is at. And then you could go to the flip side and you could have an automation engineer say I know that this logic chain is working on this conveyor belt and it is, repetitive, but there are so many disconnects, right, between a lot of these technology stacks that really make it difficult to answer that holistic question of how am I doing? How is the business doing? And if I'm not doing well, where is that waste? Yeah. What bucket, of the, 8 buckets of waste that the Toyota production system defines, where am I getting those inefficiencies that I can be attacking?
Yeah. There's a generation shift going on. I think the digitally native, the people that grew up in the digital age are starting to get positions of influence in manufacturers. They're working themselves up into the management levels. And it's becoming, okay, we can't just continue this. There's a kind of a big shift here, and you can see they cannot imagine to run any kind of manufacturing without having data.
Of course.
But then, but then you go to the hundreds, the 100-year companies, and you get, so there's going to be a big change and a big shift in how manufacturers are looking at things and how they use digital technology, without a doubt.
I think that's like a really good touch point too when we talk about AI generally, because two things that you guys brought up. One, the data side, right? Like the data and organization of data, access to data, critical context for the LLMs on the generative AI side, and just access to good data, even just like, good lighting for sensors for vision, right? Critical for that to work. But the other thing that you had brought up, Jeff, was this idea of like thinking about tools versus, I'd say, more of an operations first thinking. So you asked the question, like, how are we doing, red or green? That's not a like, which tool will give us the light, right? That's not an ERP implementation question. That's a business question that would be supported
Holistic,
by, by the tool.
Yeah.
And I feel like these two things, and correct me if I'm wrong, they kind of relate, right? The how do we manage the operation overall, and then how do we get the data we need, especially if a lot of them are still coming from like a paper environment. And I'm curious whether it's by examples or just like kind of your guys' perspective on the overlap here, what the change is looking like, change management and decision making is looking like for operations teams that maybe want to adopt generative AI and are coming from a place of like messy data, mismatched systems, or a lot of paper still recording all of their performance information.
Yeah, there's a really good foundational understanding you have to have about the manufacturing environment. Like, it is inherently this super complex system of systems, right? There are people, there are processes, there are machines, there's material, all moving and changing in this very dynamic environment that even makes it like super difficult to model. And I know like you've educated me a lot about some of the modeling work you did in your academic days. And I lived and breathed and experienced that, but maybe couldn't articulate it as you have before. And so when you have that type of environment, there is so much data that is being produced, but it is very hard to contextualize, to organize, to make meaning out of. And so I think what's in front of us today with these like new tools and these AI tools is going to be ways to actually take all of that data and actually organize it in some sort of meaningful way and actually make sense of it.
Right. It's the ease by which you collect the data, right? So going from pen and paper to a spreadsheet, you still need to transcribe, but as we engage with it, as we start bringing this new technology, you can just, like we sit in meetings and we record the meetings and it transcribes everything for us, no note taking anymore, et cetera. And that type of data. So even if you apply that to manufacturing, if you think about it, just, I know that there's privacy issues involved with that, et cetera, but if you, just transcribe or get some information, and that's, I think, the biggest issue with manufacturing right now is that they don't have the data. So they want to apply agents, but, the data is not in a format that anybody can consume. And I usually joke around, how, we talk about data lakes, which is a name that we use metaphorically for where the data lives in a lake full of water. And I say in manufacturing, we have data puddles.
Yeah.
And some of the puddles are dry, really. We can't even use this. And it's a big issue in manufacturing, and I think executives are realizing it. But still, the level of confusion in manufacturing right now about how to apply some of these technologies and what they give you, and AI, I think wrongly so, is considered like, is it another fad? Is it another buzzword?
Yeah.
I certainly don't think it is, but because of the confusion, there's some level of skepticism, but they still know that they need to do something about it.
I see.
Yeah.
You kind of perked up on skepticism. Did that make you think of something?
Well, I think if we broadly classify manufacturing, I think it's kind of in the zeitgeist that these companies have been slow to adopt technology. And I think with artificial intelligence, as we're like coming to understand it today, it's a technology that's actually going to be much more of a enabler and easier to adopt because of its power to like organize a lot of this human text data that exists in manufacturing today, right? I mean, if you just think about, again, going back to the environment, the complex systems, the number of like engineering disciplines, and deployed technologies that are already there. How do you bring all of that together and make some meaning out of it? And I think that these new tools are really going to easily enable customers using some of the infrastructure and some of the processes they already have to get some actual gains from it.
So step number one, collect the data.
Yeah.
And some of these technologies actually allow you to in an easier way collect the data or collect the data in mass. And we have to talk a bit about why the skepticism, right?
Yeah.
You know, so a manufacturing plant is, you know, part of operational excellence is making sure you're consistent.
Okay.
Meaning that the biggest headache for a plant manager is downtime. My machine is not running, I'm not producing, I'm not getting my customers the product that they need. So we're trying to minimize that. How do you minimize that? By, one of the things is don't put new stuff that may break. So when I buy a new machine, I want to make sure it runs well. It drives a lot of the decision making for a plant manager, right? Oh, I have all this new technology. That's risky for me because it may break, it may not work. I don't want the newest of machines. I want the true and tested, machines. And I try to explain this to an investor, not a Tulip, but the previous company. It was Life Sciences. Why don't they want to use this new AI technologies, et cetera? And I said, if you, let's say you need a new hip, like you're going to surgery and you need a new hip, and you lay on the table and the doctor opens you up and says, you know what? I have this new AI hip stem thing that I can install in you. Going to be the greatest thing ever. Well, I have the true and tested one here. And like, which are you going to choose, right?
True and tested.
Exactly, right? So, and that's a lot of the decision in manufacturing is driven by that. And there's a hesitancy to bring in new technologies or try new technology. And that's part of the fight with, trying to get them to adopt some of the new things. So it's a chicken and egg, like, oh yeah, but show me, it's the, they want the 20-year-old with the 60 years of experience, right? They want the technology, and we at Tulip now, we're getting there, but, at our younger years, like we have this great thing called Tulip. I want to see 30 references of where you've used it and have what's the last 20 years, like we haven't existed for 20 years.
Yeah.
You have to go on a limb here and try this because it gives you so much more benefit, right?
But there may also be just some like misunderstanding too about what the technology is. Like, I don't think we are going to have any time, at least in the next 6 months, these AI agents that are acting completely independently on their own, making decisions and, affecting, let's say, product in any way. However, you may have a lot of supportive technology that is, helping you make sense of your data, helping to, give insights or at least proposing changes that you want to make, to your manufacturing processes, right? So, yes, most of these models that we are working with now are kind of probabilistic, right? And so I think some of the skepticism may just be rooted in not understanding the potential of what the technology can actually do for you.
Hence the confusion.
Hence the confusion.
Yeah. And so, and that's what I do, right? Day in and day out, I find myself repeating myself. It's exactly that.
Yeah.
Trying to explain to customers what this technology truly is, what it is, and how it will impact, their manufacturing. And really, at the end of the day, that's what we're doing. Like, how is it going to impact value and productivity? You're really opening the gate there. You need to take a risk. Risk. I don't really actually think it's a risk to the manufacturing, but it's a perceived risk.
Yes, perceived risk.
On the manufacturing side.
So perceived risk versus innovation before and in the last 5 years.
Yeah.
Existential risk to the business if you don't innovate.
Well, it's an adage, right? Change requires crisis.
Yeah.
Well,
right. That's so we certainly have. This change and the disruption in manufacturing is driven by crisis.
yeah.
COVID is a crisis. The tariffs are creating a crisis. The adaptability, all that stuff, and that's what's driving a lot of this openness for change.